He thought he was just saving a freezing German shepherd and her puppies from the snow. But the moment they stepped inside his home, everything changed. What happened next wasn't just shocking. It was unthinkable, leaving him speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The wind howled like a wounded animal, rattling loose shutters and bending brittle trees under its icy weight. It was the kind of night when most people stayed inside, huddled close to warmth, praying the storm would pass quickly. Inside a small, weathered house at the edge of town, a man sat alone, listening to the storm batter his windows. He had grown used to silence, used to evenings where only the ticking clock kept him company. But on this night, something cut through the storm, a faint, desperate sound. At first, he thought it was just the wind carrying strange echoes. Yet as he leaned closer to the door, he heard it again, soft whimpers, weak and broken, almost swallowed by the blizzard. His heart tightened. Someone, or something, was out there, fighting to survive. And against the howling storm, it was calling for him. The man hesitated at the door, his hand hovering above the handle. The cries grew clearer now, pleading whines that pierced through the roar of the blizzard. He pulled his coat tight and stepped outside, the icy wind biting instantly at his face. Snowflakes swirled furiously, reducing the world to shadows and muffled noise. Following the faint sound, he trudged through the snowdrifts until his lantern beam fell on a heartbreaking sight. Huddled beneath a skeletal tree was a German shepherd, her fur matted with frost, her body trembling violently. Her ribs jutted through her thin frame. But what made the man's breath catch wasn't just her condition. It was the tiny shapes pressed against her belly. For puppies, barely weeks old, shivered under her, their small cries fighting to be heard over the storm. The mother raised her head weakly, eyes locking onto his with a mixture of fear and pleading. It was as though she was asking him a question. Will you help us, or will you leave us to die? For a moment, the man stood frozen, torn between disbelief and urgency. The storm howled around them, but the whimpers of the puppies cut through. The noise like a desperate prayer. His instincts took over. He shed his scarf and knelt, wrapping it gently around the shivering mother dog. Her eyes never left his, filled with exhaustion but also trust, the kind that's given only when no other choice remains. He scooped the puppies into his arms one by one, their tiny bodies stiff with cold. They were so fragile he feared they might shatter with his touch. The mother tried to rise, her legs buckling, but he lifted her too, cradling her against his chest. The warmth of his body was the only shield they had against the deadly wind. Snow pelted his face as he staggered back toward the cabin. Every step felt heavier, but the cries in his arms urged him on. When he finally pushed the door open, the bitter night gave way to a fragile sliver of hope. The cabin's warmth hit them like a blessing, though the air inside was still chilly from the fire that had burned low. The man rushed to stoke it, tossing logs onto the embers until flames sprang to life, crackling with a promise of safety. He placed the puppies in a worn blanket near the hearth, their faint whimpers slowly softening as the heat began to reach them. The mother dog lay trembling on the rug, her chest rising and falling with visible effort. He wrapped her in another blanket, his hands clumsy but desperate to comfort her. For the first time, he noticed how emaciated she was, her ribs jutting out, her fur matted with ice and mud. She had sacrificed everything to keep her little ones alive. The man sat back, heart racing, unsure if they would survive the night. As the flames cast flickering shadows across the room, he whispered, almost to himself, "You're safe now. You're not alone anymore." It was a promise he prayed he could keep. Morning sunlight crept through the frosted window, bathing the room in pale gold. The man stirred from the chair where he had dozed off, startled by the faint sound of movement. The puppies, warmer now, had begun to wriggle in their blanket, tiny whines filling the quiet cabin. Their mother, still weak, lifted her head slowly, her dark eyes finding his. For a moment, the man froze. Those eyes, though tired, held a depth of gratitude that pierced straight through him. She didn't growl, didn't shrink back, just watched as he carefully poured warm milk into a shallow dish. To his surprise, she leaned forward, sniffed cautiously, and allowed him to slide the dish closer. The puppies crowded clumsily around, tiny tongues lapping at the milk. Their mother let out a soft, low whine, but it wasn't of fear, it was relief. The man couldn't help but smile, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. For the first time in years, his cabin wasn't silent. It was alive with hope. Days blended into nights, and the cabin that once echoed with silence now hummed with life. The man found himself adjusting to a new routine, warming bottles of milk, drying tiny paws by the fire, and gently stroking the mother dog's head as she regained her strength. She began to trust him more with each passing day, her once cautious eyes softening every time he entered the room. For the man, it was more than care. It was healing. For years he had lived with a hollow ache, loneliness that gnawed at him every evening. Now, as he watched the puppies tumbling clumsily across the wooden floor, that ache slowly began to fade. Laughter, something he hadn't felt in ages, slipped past his lips when one pup barked at his own reflection in the kettle. The mother dog rested peacefully, no longer shivering, her body leaning just enough against the man's leg to show she trusted him. Two broken souls, man and dog, were finding comfort in each other's presence. Just as life inside the cabin began to feel safe, the unthinkable shattered the calm. One stormy night, the man was jolted awake by frantic barking. The mother dog stood rigid at the door, her teeth bared, her body shielding the puppies huddled in a corner. The man grabbed his lantern and unlatched the door, only to find footprints in the snow, fresh, heavy, and leading straight toward his cabin. His heart pounded. He lived miles from town. No one ever came this far unless they had a reason. Before he could react, a loud bang echoed outside. The mother dog snarled, launching herself toward the sound. The puppies whimpered, their tiny bodies trembling against his boots. The man's hands shook as he reached for the old rifle by the fireplace. In that instant, he realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. Someone, or something, was after them, and the fragile trust they had built was about to be tested in the most dangerous way. The man braced himself, lantern flickering, rifle clutched tightly. But then, silence. Only the whistling wind remained. Slowly, the mother dog returned, snow clinging to her fur, her growl fading into a soft whine. She nudged his leg as if to say, "It's over. We're safe." Relief washed over him. He lowered the rifle and knelt, running a trembling hand over her head. For the first time, she didn't pull away. The puppies stumbled toward him, tails wagging weakly, and he felt something stir inside his chest, something he hadn't felt in years, belonging. By morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight poured through the frosted windows, warming the tiny cabin. The man brewed coffee, the puppies squeaked around his feet, and the mother dog curled by the fire. He realized the unthinkable wasn't danger after all. It was love, unexpected, undeniable, and life-changing. In saving them, they had saved him too.